Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Making Action Happen. I'm Sarah Blackhurst.
And I'm Brian McCain.
And we are here today with another one of our Action 22 members who's running for office. And so now, if you've been listening the last few weeks, you know that that's our thing right now, is that we're trying to help out our candidates, really get their voice out there. And most, if you're paying attention, most everybody who's running for office on any level is an Action 22 member. And so we like this format a lot, especially this election year, because it's a little more authentic. There's always a lot of drama around debates and forums and all of that. So we actually really appreciate all of our candidates who are members. Our member candidates, that doesn't
member
sound
candidates.
Right. Yeah,
candidate members.
Candidate members. Let's do candidate members. That sounds a little bit better. Coming on the show and doing this so that we get to know them a little bit better. So today we've got Pam Anderson with us. We're excited. We're excited to have her here. She's doing this by Zoom because she lives quite a ways away. And we wanted to get her, we wanted to get this discussion up as soon as possible for her. So Pam is running for Secretary of State. And so Pam, thanks so much for being with us and joining us. We know that this is one of, I think, Secretary of State 10 years ago nobody was paying attention, I think, as much.
Yeah.
But there's been a drama around the Secretary of State seat. So Pam, will you start off, and we'll get to that, but start off by just introducing yourselves and telling our listeners from all over Colorado, all over the U.S. and actually in other countries as well, because we're on the Voice America Network. Just will you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, and I love this format too. I love the more authentic and conversational approach. It gives me an opportunity to tell folks about myself and why I'm running for the race for Secretary of State. You're right. The Secretary of State's race has been elevated primarily due to current events over the last several years. I am a former nonpartisan municipal clerk, City of Wheat Ridge, here in Colorado. I was elected in Wheat Ridge, and then I went on and ran and served as a Republican clerk and recorder for Jefferson County, Colorado, for 2 terms. We have term limits in Jefferson County. In our rural areas, most of the term limits have been eliminated, so you might see your county clerks a little bit longer than you would in the metro areas of the state. But I served a very politically diverse jurisdiction, Jefferson County. It was a third, Republican, Democrat, unaffiliated. I believe that this office is a nonpartisan one. I think it deserves a professional in the office. I'm a certified federal and state election official. My husband, Jay, and I have been married 28 years, and we're business owners. Light manufacturing, die casting, powder coat. And when I was term limited, I went on to work in management and leadership. I have a master's in public administration. So advising local governments and states and federal government as well on leadership management, making government more efficient, but specializing in elections administration, because I really learned to love providing constitutional rights, access to your constitutional rights, make it more efficient and secure. So I was the executive director for the Colorado County Clerks Association. That gave me about 5.5 years, an opportunity to travel all over the state, represent all 64 county clerks, and work to...
So go back and talk about your experience with the County Clerk Association. I think that's really pertinent.
Yeah, when I was term limited as the Jefferson County Clerk and Recorder, and as a clerk, I served in leadership. I was president of the association. I was a legislative co-chair. I really enjoyed advocating on that front. And so one of some of the work that I did was as executive director for the County Clerks Association. I represented all 64 counties. I got to travel around this beautiful state, visiting and working with my local election officials, and helping them and advocating for their citizens for funding, against unfunded mandates, and all of the things that make their job and service to their community better.
I want to come back to some of the experiences that you had while doing that, and some of the things that you learned. But before that, tell us what the job is of a Secretary of State for Colorado. What's that job look like?
Yeah, so some usually have to be told what the Secretary of State does. As we said, it's been elevated a little bit. There are two primary functions. One is the chief election official for the state of Colorado. As I said, I'm a certified election official, both federally and state. I believe this is a professional position that should operate in a nonpartisan way, as I did as a county clerk and working with the Clerks Association. Another entire section of it is to enhance commerce, so business licensing and supporting our charities and nonprofits. There's a whole business center side of that. As a small business owner, as well as running both a very large operation in Jefferson County, where we were front-facing customer service for motor vehicle title and registration, which is very high volume customer service, as well as working to enhance technology to support our businesses, is the background and experience I would bring to both sections of the Secretary of State's role.
So I appreciate that.
Oh, I was just going to say, again, that it's elevated to a new level. Same thing with the treasurer. This is the first time when we've seen serious interest in the treasurer, the Secretary of State, even down to school boards, and one thing that I always said, that if you want to be involved in politics and kind of make a difference, you need to look at these races because they are important. And these positions, whether it's county clerk, Secretary of State to school board member, these are the people that impact us. And it seems at this point in time in our country that the focus is on elections, which makes this office and this role so important right now, more so than almost or as much as any other one, if not more, in my opinion, with that. So I think we haven't really said this on our show, but we appreciate people running for office because you're putting your life on the line, basically, your personal life. And I know in your race, there's a microscope on it right now. And that takes a lot of courage. And we don't say that on the show. We don't thank these people,
We do.
So thank you. Appreciate it very much.
So there's been so much drama, in particular around the Secretary of State, that role in that position. That it was, I think before it was just a statewide county clerk. That's what it was looked like at. Yeah. But now it's a whole other thing. What's your perspective on that? Now, having been in both roles, having been there and you see that, and now the seat that you're running for.
Yeah, I agree with you. The attention to these roles and what they do for citizens couldn't be higher, and particularly around elections. We've had, it's not unusual for Colorado to have a lot of conversation about election integrity. We've historically been a swing county, a swing state in presidential elections, the only race that crosses state lines. We have a very localized system of elections. In Jefferson County, we were sort of the center of close elections, and election integrity and questions about how our elections work have been our history. I have had a hand and led on probably every single piece of the legislation in the last 15 years in order to provide a system of elections here in Colorado that put in place best practices and transparency. Every voter votes on a paper ballot. We have public boards that certify and audit that paper ballot was counted accurately. And I never wanted to be in a position, and it had some foresight, I think, to be in the position as an elected election official to say, trust us, we're your government. We want it to be very transparent, very public. And that has served us well. But there has been a lot of questions and concerns and criticism around elections outcomes, the results of election based on the presidential election for 2020. And I think it perfectly placed Colorado in a position to say, this is how we know. My background and experience in developing audits, for example, we have a statewide audit that was the first in the country that takes those paper ballots and and examines them so we can be confident that the outcome is correct. I won a medallion award from the National Associations of Secretary of State on that work. And what we've learned in elections is in order to maintain trust and confidence, we need to make sure it's transparent, accurate, and verifiable. And what I started seeing in 2018 was this disturbing trend for people running for these offices more interested in the politics than the process. In 2018, I've seen the state, my opponent at the Secretary of State, and in some instances at the local level with county clerks, use the platform and take an opportunity in a very polarized time to use the platform to elevate their profile, to instead of being that professional to stand and answer the questions for the public, but throw fuel on the fire of that rhetoric. And in some ways that's elevated the office and created a lot of scrutiny. But other ways, I think what we need to do is to restore trust and faith by bringing back that professionalism and experience.
Yeah, I'm not going to mention any names or locations on this, but there was one point, and it was around 2018. I remember coming outside my office working for a congressman, and we had protesters. It was fine, and we got along, but that's what they're doing. They're protesting some legislation that my boss supported, and 2:00 in the afternoon, the county clerk's out there waving a sign. And when I saw that, I was like, something about this just doesn't sit right with me.
I agree. And I think, there's always politics around elections, but elections management is not a partisan issue.
Yes.
Right.
It's an American value, right? And we all can agree that we want free and fair and accurate and transparent elections. And that is the background and experience I will bring to that office.
I'm so glad you said that, Pam, because I've thought so many times. I was on a Canvas board back in 2012.
Thank you.
That was such a learning experience for me. And it was, when we were first really, Colorado was first really trying out the mail-in ballot, and trying to make sure that that was going to be something, work out all the kinks on that. And I'm like you, I've seen in the last few years that position has been politically weaponized, and it's really, really disturbing. How would you keep that from continuing?
Well, what we know is accountability matters, right? And electing leaders that are straightforward and aren't going to put their thumb on the scale or use the office and break the public trust. And I have examples and initiatives for what I would do to restore some of that broken trust. For example, I believe that that we need a bill with the legislature, and I'd hope to get support of that no elected official should use public taxpayer money with their image as announced candidate for commercials or to elevate their profile.
That's not illegal already?
It is not illegal. And I think we need to codify that. I believe, particularly for the Secretary of State's office, it is a professional ethic. And so in absence of action from the legislature, I will institute professional ethics, code of ethics, publish it, be transparent about it, and say, look, to give a message against mis and disinformation about our evidence-based elections is really important. I don't need my face to be the messenger if I'm an announced candidate. If you're going to air a commercial during the Broncos game, I think John Elway would be a great spokesperson for that message. And so I do think that there needs to be an arm's length distance from the fray, the political fray. This office, I've worked with the last 6 secretaries of state. And you can have politically principled individuals that remain above the fray, whether they're Republican or Democrat. And I think we've crossed those lines with the current administration and at the local level, and with some examples. And, the public, I think this is a professional position. And what this election is for me, it's a job interview for me, but it's also a performance review of the incumbent. And I think there are really clear differences for how you can restore trust. I've gone to every room to stand up there and talk about why I have confidence and faith in our process and how I think it can get even better. Both those things can exist in the same space. We don't have to use hyperpartisan rhetoric on either side to convince people one way or the other. That erodes the confidence. I think voters are smart. I had a very robust primary. I had faith that they can look at the message and restore that broken trust by moving forward a professional.
So going to the primary, again, the office, this race being elevated, this was national news. Like your primary was in the national spotlight. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of scary because, and we're completely nonpartisan in Action 22 in the show. And we walked that line very well and we do our best to stay that way. But that was one that I watched carefully because that was, are people really paying attention to some of these things happening right now? And are we going to see a complete blowout for a certain candidate that would be, in my opinion, kind of scary at the time? When you saw the results of that primary, were you surprised?
So I wasn't surprised by the result. I think the margin, it was about a 14-point margin, and I have to admit that surprised me. I wasn't surprised by the outcome because I don't believe, for example, Twitter is the real world.
Yes, thank you.
Right. I've been in a lot of rooms talking to voters of all political persuasions. We've built a very large coalition. We had an event last week where I have Democrats, Republicans, and unaffiliated stepping forward and supporting us. Election heroes, people who have served in this work, who said, no, we agree this needs to be a professional, nonpartisan approach. And that resonates with people, that resonates with voters. And there is a reason why Coloradans are leaving affiliations for both parties in such large numbers. Mm-hmm. I believe that Coloradans are very independent-minded, whether they lean left or right, that they want someone who's there to do the job that they're elected to do and to hold the public trust in a way that, election integrity isn't always just about elections. It's also about leadership.
And you're right in saying that Colorado is very independent-minded, and we've seen it with the recent elections where it's not straight tickets, like straight votes down the ticket. It's not all Republican, all Democrat, or all unaffiliated. We've seen it with, tax increases where you can go in areas and some people voted for some in the past, but not others. And to me, that means that people are paying attention a little better. I think instead of the well, I'm a Democrat, I'm going to vote Democrat, or I'm a Republican, I'm going to vote Republican. So I appreciate that. And one thing that you did say that I've been telling people, it's like, look, even if you don't win and you're running for office, at least it's an audit on who is there and can show them a different perspective. Because no matter if you win or lose, it's still 50-50. It's not that far apart. And I think that needs to be a wake-up call to elected officials that there are people that aren't really happy with what they're doing or how they're operating, and maybe that can hopefully cause them to see a different perspective on it. And
in my work, and this office, the Secretary of State's office is really a destination for me. It's not a stepping stone. I am not interested in going to Washington, D.C. This is my life's work. And I think I have a record of working at the legislature across the aisle. I've stood up for voters when it's not been popular in my own party, as the primary is a pretty good example. But also up against, the political interests that that are more interested in the outcome of elections versus the process. And we shouldn't have a secretary that is telling the world press that if you elect one party or another, that the end of democracy is coming. I think that crosses lines for Coloradans and is not in the best interest of our history or tradition. There is a reason why we have some of the best elections administration, not only in the country, but in the world. It's because we pay attention at the local, as a local election official, and the legislature has listened to us at the local level by and large to say, we want to follow our voters and we're less concerned about outcome. And we want to bring a process that is efficient and effective to make it easy to vote and hard to cheat. Both those things can exist in the same space. And if you create a partisan rhetoric around elections administration, trust erodes, and it makes it much harder to work on the important reforms that we'll continue to work on with new technology, or find new ways to provide access to our military overseas voters, or what other reforms come down the pike. So I think, it is a message that is resonating, and also pushing back against efforts to remove that ability at the local level to innovate and to provide the services to their voters. It's been unfortunate when I've seen, very scarce one-time federal fund resources diverted for things like commercials, instead of going to where it needs to be to support it. There has been a broken trust at the state when we've been trying to advocate for voters. We may be all on board for an idea, but if they don't fund it, at the local level, that's a problem. And the reimbursement for election support has not been increased in over 10 years for our rural areas. And so that is another initiative. I will only support fully funding elections to the local level. If we have concerns, we should put our money where our mouth is and support those, that are underfunded. I live in Jefferson County. My opponent lives in Boulder County. Local elections are primarily supported through property values, property taxes. And my property values have done a very different thing than Montezuma County or Kit Carson County. And so we need to have equitable funding.
So you win the election, first day on the job. What's priority number one?
Take the rhetoric down and increase the professionalism and ethics of the office, stabilize the very high turnover through the leadership gap that we've had, so that we can serve our nonprofits and our charities in a way. I worked with the county clerks during the pandemic, a very difficult time for elections and frontline service workers, critical essential personnel, to get up and running as quickly as possible to serve their duty and obligation. My opponent closed the office for over 2 years. And I think there's a really different approach to creating a stable, customer service-based oriented, business side for enhancing commerce, and being that professional to restore that professionalism, eliminate the rhetoric, and continue our tradition of outstanding elections reforms and improving our elections, and being a credible spokesperson for it.
And what is the current office? What is it doing right now? What's something that works, that they're nailing it on the head?
Yeah, I've worked with the last 6 administrations, and there are a lot of really good public servants at the Secretary of State's office. One of the things I'm very dismayed about is the high turnover, and that we might be losing them, because these are typically mission-driven individuals. They're not partisan. They're not interested in the politics of it. And so they're looking for leadership to restore some stability and restore that mission for Coloradans. And so one of the things that I can say that my opponent did very well, we've learned through influence of nation state actors way back in 2016 how important cybersecurity is, right? And we established really good cybersecurity protocols, and the federal government funded one-time grants for cybersecurity. Unfortunately, and she hired and recruited one of the best cybersecurity teams in the country, did a YouTube commercial about it. They already left. They're already gone. And so I think what we need is to make sure that we're supporting the mission with the right priorities for utilizing scarce resources and funding, and making sure we're passing through that support and that mission to our local election officials to give them the best support. I'm used to working shoulder to shoulder, side by side with the entire state. And I think that there are really good people with this mission at the state that need better support.
And what do you tell the people, and we heard it, Sarah's son Ferris was talking to us, and he's like, I'm just not going to vote. It's pointless. What do you tell specifically the younger generation, and it's even bleeding into like late 20s, early 30s, of these people that say they have no faith in our election system and my vote doesn't matter? What do you do, or what do you tell these people to build that trust?
Yeah, first, I think, by removing the partisan rhetoric, that the biggest threat is mis and disinformation. And by making it partisan, I think you're contributing to that. And so that priority, I have a initiative that I will institute when elected. It's called the Citizen Election Academy. And it's a variation of a theme that I did at the local election level. Sarah, you served on the canvas board. We have these public roles. Our elections are done locally by your neighbors, by your friends, by your church members. And what I think is we can improve transparency by allowing Coloradans to come in and take some of the same training and education and get insight into the process that local election officials take to be certified. And then they become ambassadors. Young people are incredibly engaged. Jay and I raised a couple of them. We have a 24 and 22-year-old. Those that are willing to invest their civic, capital, and have these concerns. Let's give them more access to the process. Let's double down on the transparency and support local election officials, because then after going through this academy, I'd like to work with the legislature to say, if you get certified in this academy and serve as an election judge, you get a little bit more pay to serve in your local community. I think that would go a very long way for people to say, hey, I've seen the nuts and bolts of all of this, and I have a lot of confidence in it.
Do you want to ask her, or should I?
I was gonna ask a fun one. So if your kids didn't vote when they turned 18, did you get mad at them?
My kids are very active voters. So their grandmother served in the legislature for almost 20 years, Pam Anderson. I've been fairly civically engaged in my career. And if you think that the campaign trail or debates are tough, you should check out our Sunday dinners. So they're very active. But I also believe in responsibility. And so one of my kids, I won't name them, when they were in college, I didn't set forward their ballot to them. They had to update their address and maintain their own status. And they were scrambling for one election in order to get their ballot and be able to vote. So again, we have so much access. We make it really easy to vote here in Colorado, but there is responsibility for that. Both of my kids, we have robust debates on policies and candidates, and we raised two pretty darn independent kids. We were blessed to do that, but they also went to college as far away from me as they could get for but they've come back to Colorado. They've got jobs. We love their partners. They live on their own. They're paying their student loans right now, knocking on wood. I feel like we're batting 1,000.
You are.
Good.
Trust me, you are. Well, Pam, thanks so much for joining us today. We appreciate it. We appreciate your perspective. And I know it's something that we hear a lot about, and we actually talk a lot about how do we do this better. So we appreciate you. Disclaimer.
Well, I was going to ask if somebody wants to know more about you and see what you're about, where do they go?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So you can see all about me and our initiatives and our broad coalition of support at andersonforsos.com. And I'd love for folks to check it out, learn about the candidates, and would really love to earn your vote for November.
Well, we appreciate it. I have to do this boring disclaimer after all of these. And I always mess it up. I skip a word or something.
He never messes it up.
Always mess it up. But Action 22 is a nonpartisan organization. We don't endorse candidates during election season, but we do support our members. So if you are a member of Action 22 and you're running for office, I don't care how small or how large, just hit us up, show@action22.org. Come on, you have the platform. Tell us what you're about. Again, it's show@action22.org.
So we have a lot of interesting things coming up. Of course, we're going to be moderating the gubernatorial debate. It'll be the first between Heidi Ganal and Jared Polis. It'll be here in Pueblo on the 28th of September. Then we have a few other things happening. The Chilean Free Holy Festival is happening in Pueblo. We have nothing to do with that, but we're going to.
But you should still go.
You should still, no, you should
We'll
totally
be there.
go.
I'll be there.
We'll all be there, but
I'll gain 10 pounds afterwards from eating all the food. But
we're gonna. I don't know if I told you I signed you up for the jalapeno eating contest. But that's run by the chamber, and it's just a really great event. I want to give a shout out for just a moment. I'm going to take some executive privilege and give a shout out to Dwayne Nava and the Greater Pueblo team. They've put together, and it's not been easy at all these debates that they've put together. It was a huge project, and it was Dwayne's first time to try to do it. Dwayne, you did just a really beautiful job, and your team did a really beautiful job, and I just want to congratulate you on all of that, and even with all the drama that's going on around who shows up and who doesn't. Finally, we have and tickets are up on sale now, and you'll get some more information, but we're having our annual meeting on the 21st and 22nd, our Action 2022 annual meeting on October 21st and 22nd. I got as many twos. I got as many twos in there as I could. And it's going to be, it's not a candidate forum, but it's going to be candidates on display is what I'm calling it, because I was trying honestly to be able to promote it on Facebook. That was the only way I could get it on Facebook. But we want to invite everybody to come. We have some really great speakers and a lot of fun around that event. So you'll be getting more information, and we'll be calling you. You need to sign up for that. It's gonna be a break in the middle of all the ballots will be out. By then, they will have just come out, because I think they go out on the 17th, right? Don't they, Pam? They get mailed on the 17th.
Yeah. And I had the idea of handing Nerf guns to everybody as they go in.
We may do that still. I don't know.
That may not turn out well.
I don't know. But there is going to be hockey. There will be a hockey game. There will be a hockey game.
That'll be fun.
On Friday night. So we're all going to go to the hockey game. But and let us know if there's any issue in particular that you'd like for us to ask our candidates, or to bring our candidates back on the show about, or anything like that, or anything else you'd like us to talk about. You can visit us or email Brian at show@action22.org, and he's going to bring that up. If you're not currently a member of Action 22, why aren't you? If you're in the arena of any kind of public service whatsoever, we need you. You need your voice at the table, and you're going to be surprised how it's going to elevate your position immediately just by being a member of Action 22. So you can also find out more information if you email Micah, and you can do show@action22.org as well for that.
Yep, and visit our website, www.action22.org, and you will see all of our candidate videos up there. So Please watch those.
Yeah, thanks. And feel free to share. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.